Back in 1996, I received a number of stories, some from retired British military personnel, suggesting that if I wanted to find out what the British government really knew about UFOs and particularly so crashed UFOs, I would be wise to focus my attentions not so much on the work of the Ministry of Defense, but on that of the Home Office. Although the Home Office is chiefly known for its work in the fields of counter-terrorism, immigration and crime policy, there are indications that its work delves into far deeper and much more mysterious areas too. According to several of the accounts provided to me back in '96, the Home Office oversaw the security surrounding a number of secret underground bunkers located across the south and southwest of England. They were built as fortified havens for senior military and government personnel in the event of nuclear strike on the UK by the Soviets during the Cold War. I was advised, however, that deep within two of the bunkers were stored the remains of a number of alien bodies, all preserved in cryogenic states. Of course, there is nothing new about such controversial claims. There are numerous accounts, particularly within the United States, of retired military personnel supposedly having seen extraterrestrial corpses in secret hangars or in classified vaults. And indeed, many people with an interest in ufology will know of the rumors surrounding the supposed Hangar 18 and the tales of dead aliens at Area 51.
With so many conspiracy theories out there, it's hard to keep track of them all. Welcome to What We Know, where we try to uncover the histories and mysteries of the world by presenting all different theories out there, and the only narrative we push is this. Here's what we know, make up your own mind.
What makes the stories about the Home Office and UFOs so interesting and different, however, is noted lack of attention they have received over the years. That's not to say there isn't an intriguing body of data available. Quite the contrary, there actually is an intriguing body of data on this matter. According to researcher and author Timothy Good, in his 1987 book, Above Top Secret, a close friend of mine whom I have known since 1952, witnessed the landing of an unidentified flying object in Derbyshire in September 1963 and subsequently came into contact with its operators. 4 years afterwards, two men with Home Office identification cards turned up at my friend's flat and politely asked a number of questions which clearly indicated that they were familiar with aspects of the incident. Similarly, in 1982, Good interviewed an eye-opening interview with a retired police inspector in an attempt to determine if the UFO issue was subject to the constraints of British government's Official Secrets Act, a piece of legislation utilized to muzzle government employees when deemed necessary by officialdom, according to Good's source. What I can say to you is that I know the subject itself was the subject of a Home Office directive. Further data that suggested a link between the world of the UFO and that of the Home Office came from the late Graham Birdsall of UFO magazine, who informed me that he had spoken with one George Wilde, a prison officer at Armley Prison in the English city of Leeds, on a highly controversial matter of a UFO nature. Wilde informed Birdsall that a senior Home Office prison official had once let it slip to him that on the first night of the famous series of the UFO incidents at Rendlesham Forest, Suffolk, England in December 1980, high-level orders had arrived at the nearby High Point prison, advising staff to prepare for a possible evacuation of the inmates due to a matter of national security. I also learned in 1996 from a now retired UK government official that Home Office had extensive guidelines in place in the event that a space satellite decayed from its orbit and crashed on British soil. You could equally apply those guidelines to a crash UFO, he said, with a smile of knowing kind, acting on this information in December 1996. I telephoned the Home Office and asked to be put through to their press office. I explained the situation. I was interested to know what the Home Office's response would be if a large metallic object from space such as a satellite crashed to Earth on the UK. I considered it wise not to mention UFOs, even though that was my primary area of interest. I was transferred to a helpful man who informed me that the responsibility for monitoring satellite movements over the British Isles was predominantly the domain of the tracking station at RAF, Fylingdales, Yorkshire. If it appears there is a possibility, however remote, that a satellite in a decaying orbit might impact on the UK, Fylingdales and standing orders to keep the Ministry of Defense informed, who in turn were obliged to advise the Home Office of the unfolding situation, as the press officer explained to me. The Home Office has responsibility for emergency planning, which obviously isn't specific necessarily to satellites. But the situation is they only really become a matter for the home offices when they have landed, because that's when the emergency services come into play. He continued, for example, there was one recently, a Chinese satellite which came down. That was one we were kept well informed of and were aware of. We were advised of the expected time it was going to land and all that kind of stuff. We don't really take much actual action. Our side would be more the policy angle, ensuring that all the right contingency plans are in place. My next stop, RAF Filing Tails. You want the space information officer, I was advised by the switchboard operator at Filing Tails when I detailed my quest to her. A few moments later, the SIO was on the line. We track satellites all the time. When there are predictions for satellite decays, this is maintained by US and UK authorities. And if there is one which is potentially going to cause problems, the Ministry of Defense and the Home Office are the people who get involved. We would just track it and keep those people up to date with what was happening with the satellite at the time. The Home Office and the MOD do all the coordination. Accurate predictions as to where something is going to crash are very difficult. It depends exactly on what the satellite's doing. If it's rolling, or if it's got high drag in one part or another. It also depends on what angle it enters the upper end of the atmosphere. There are experts that are able to calculate to within an hour or so when it's coming down. We can advise the Home Office and the MOD of the position of the satellite, how it's moving, whether it's speeding up, slowing down, or whether it's changing its attitude, or whatever. In addition, and also in 1996, I received a newly declassified Home Office Directive of 1979 titled Home Office Circular number ES5/1979, Satellite Accidents. It dealt with Home Office guidelines for dealing with the possible recovery of stricken space vehicles on the British mainland. The document stated, it is for the government to decide whether and if so by what means a public warning of danger from radioactivity should be given. In reaching that decision, that need to prevent unnecessary alarm would be carefully considered. Chief officers should therefore ensure that nothing is done locally to anticipate a government statement. When reports of suspected or actual locations have been received, the police should take such steps as may be needed locally to prevent people entering areas which may be dangerous because of radioactive material. Some larger pieces of debris might have radiation fields of significance over distances of the order of 100 meters. The document then went on to illustrate the many and varied divisions within the British government that had jurisdiction in the area of fallen spacecraft, as well as the Home Office. This included the Atomic Weapons Research Establishment at Aldermaston, the National Radiological Protection Board, the Ministry of Defense, Chief Officers of Police and Chief Fire Officers in the UK, and representatives of the NIRE scheme, the National Arrangements for Incidents Involving Radioactivity. Clearly, the directive and the testimony of staff at the Home Office and at RAF Filing Tails was relative to the Home Office's involvement in the recovery of crashed space vehicles of terrestrial origin. But what of the Home Office's link with objects of possible non-terrestrial origin? I have to admit that, although I have a number of stories on file concerning alleged Home Office involvement in crash UFO events in the UK, nothing concrete or definitive has ever surfaced. Nevertheless, where there is smoke, there is often a degree of fire too.
If you enjoy this video and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing to us and hitting the like button. Feel free to write a comment below and suggest which theory you want to see next. If you'd like to further support this channel, please consider joining. Our membership link will be found in the description box below. We appreciate your support, and as always, thanks for watching.